Welcome to the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground, holy ground, holy ground, holy ground.
This is a Spirit Session podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone, Katie here. This podcast is intended to inspire you, educate you, and most importantly, support you on your journey towards knowing who you really are, that inner self, that inner teacher. I am not a psychologist or a medical doctor and do not offer professional health or medical advice on this podcast. If you are suffering from any kind of psychological or medical issue, please do the right thing and seek help from your qualified health professional. Hey guys, just a quick word from our sponsor. Founded in 2014 by two female Ayurvedic practitioners and named after the Sanskrit term for purity, Pavani Ayurveda takes pride in offering pure products that are made of entirely ingredients from the earth. And here's the thing, you all. Everybody in Shakti school is like, what should I put on my food? What spices should I cook with? Well, here's why I love Pavani. They have solved this for you, okay? First of all, their products are 100% earth-based, organic, wild harvested, certified cruelty-free, gluten-free, paraben-free, chemical-free. You know these girls in California. They're going to do it right. So with products packaged in glass, which is massive for me personally, they maintain the integrity of the herbs with labels printed with water-based inks on recycled paper. Guys, Pavani is really serious about protecting Mama Earth and spreading the wisdom of Ayurveda to the modern world. That's why we get a lot of people that want to be ads for our podcast, and we only work with a few, and these girls are one of them. You can check out their offerings on their website at pavaniayurveda.com. We've got all the links in the show notes to that. And they have everything from dosha-specific skincare, abhyanga oils, loose leaf teas, herbal supplements, and neti pots. And here's the big news, and this is why I love them. They've created these new spice blends. And what that means is that you don't have to do the work at home. These women did it for you. There's a kapha, a pitta, and a vata spice blend, and there's a tridoshic spice blend. So you can use those if you know about your Ayurveda dosha to balance your gut. And if you don't, you need to join Shakti school. And, maybe we should do a whole thing about understanding your dosha. That's a really good idea. But in the meantime, here's just a really good practice. This is what I do. I don't really eat for my personal dosha. I eat seasonally. And so right now I'm in Hawaii and it's hot. And so I'm using their Pitta spice blend because Pitta cools and soothes, right? When I go back to Virginia in a month, it's going to be spring. And that's a great time to be working with the kapha dosha. You want to heat it up and purify it. So guys, these spice blends are wonderful, and I can't recommend them enough. All right, more with Pavani in the links, and on to the show. Hey loves, it's your girl here, Katie. It's been a minute since I've been with you guys by myself, and I'm just really excited to offer you something super near and dear to my own journey, which is, yes, a very long experience of having insomnia. I know. Contrary to belief, people who write books about Ayurveda or who teach yoga or really any discipline, it doesn't mean that they have perfect health. And I always try to tell people that the reason that I'm so in love with these practices and studying myself is that I need these teachings more than anybody. And so what's so beautiful about that is when you've really struggled with something, and I know you listeners out there know what I'm talking about. If you've struggled your whole life with anxiety, you have a lot of compassion for people who have it. If you've had depression, you really, really get it. And sleep stuff, man, whenever I hear someone talk about that, I so get it. And honestly, if you haven't ever had any issues with sleep, it can be really hard for you to understand just how life altering in a deleterious way and sleep issues can be. And so I just want to come to you guys with all my heart and say, if you're listening to this podcast because you want to have better sleep and you struggle with insomnia, particularly the kind that in Ayurvedic medicine we call Vata type, I completely get you. So let's talk a little bit about that. So there are really two main types of insomnia, and we could say that there's a Kapha type as well. So the first would be Pitta type insomnia. Pitta type is the fire type, and that's going to be the kind of sleep issue where you just can't fall asleep. Your mind starts to race around 10:30, 11 maybe if it's the summertime, and you struggle, right? You just kind of get, we call it the second wind. The other type is Vata type, and with Vata type insomnia, it's like clockwork, right? Around 2:30 to 3:30 or so, you wake up in the middle of the night, so you can't stay asleep. And often when you wake up, you might have that racing mind stuff start to happen. So what I want to focus on today is what to do if you can't get back to sleep, if it's the Vata type, and what to do to help yourself go to sleep. Now, I'm going to be really specific about it. We're not going to go into the big Ayurveda routines around sleep. We've done that in other podcasts. We talk about it at length in the Shakti school and Ayurveda school. What I really want to focus on today is, okay, it's like 10:30 and you know you need to go to bed and you're really tired, but you can't shut your brain off. Or you've gone to sleep fine, but you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep and you start to worry, etc. First of all, as always, I'm not a medical doctor, so make sure to check in with your doc, whether that be medical, psychiatric, that's important. But really, these simple things can take you very far. I mention that because sometimes sleep can be related to a physiological issue, i.e. a hormone imbalance, right? Maybe you've got a virus or a parasite. So there can be a physical thing that you want to definitely make sure you rule out before you go straight to the Ayurvedic remedies or the, non-Western mainstream traditional medical remedies. So that's important, but these are super helpful. So, I'm friends with the amazing sleep doctor, Michael Bruce, who I had a conversation with about a month ago. And I was telling him how much my sleep has improved and over the course of past 5 or 6 years. And one of the reasons is that I've done the work, right? Like a lot of times our insomnia is related to just unprocessed stuff from our past that's kind of triggering us and waking us up. And so that's important, right? But then there can just be this tendency in some of us to have sleep be where our mind body manifests its imbalances. So the most important thing, if you're listening out there and you struggle with sleep, is you are not alone. You are not weird. Your body and mind think it's helping you, right? There's some kind of signal that's telling you that you should wake up. And so one of the most important things to think about when we are talking about midnight wakings or being unable to sleep is one of my past teachers, Alicia, used to say, your sleep is mirroring at night what went on for you during the day. And that was such a great piece of advice. Shout out Alicia Farhado. Because if you are under a lot of stress during the day, oftentimes it can show up in your inability to sleep at night or how you wake up. And so just taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes throughout the day, and I'm going to teach you a little practice that you can do as well, is super important for helping us process the day so that at night we don't get overwhelmed by how much our subconscious has to process. And sometimes if it's too much, in Ayurvedic medicine, we say that the heart, right, is waking up the head, right? Our emotions are kind of moving upward when we want them to move down and outward. So back to my friend, Dr. Michael Bruce, shout out to him as well, because we were talking and I was like, sleep is so much better. I can't even believe it. But every now and then, it's going to be the place where my imbalances show up, and my sleep isn't perfect, you all. So some nights I wake up in the middle of the night, and he gave me the best advice. He said, the most important thing, he says this publicly, so I'm not, repeating anything I don't have permission to. He says, I am the sleep doctor. He's been on Dr. Oz. He's probably the most famous sleep doctor in the world. And he said, and my sleep's not perfect. And there's something about that just took all the pressure off. And I think if you are a woman or a man out there listening who are in the health field, whether you're a doctor or a health coach, there can be this feeling like, of so much shame when your health is not perfect. And ironically, that triggers cortisol and stress and worry and takes you even further from health. So just to know, Katie Silcox is saying this, Dr. Michael Bruce, sleep doctor of all sleep doctors, celebrity sleep doctor, we don't have it perfect. And so just something about that compassionate admission enabled me to relax. And that's the secret. When you wake up or when you can't go to bed, the last thing that we want to do is shame and blame ourselves and make ourselves bad and worry. And so if you wake up in the middle of the night, the first thing that you want to say to yourself is, cool, no big deal. My body knows how to rest, and I can rest and get maybe not deep sleep, but I can get that restful presence even when I'm awake. So try to stay positive and try really not to do clock watching. Don't look at the clock and instantly start doing that mental math around, oh my God, I'm only going to get 6 hours, or now it's 5.5 and now it's 4. And that just becomes a countdown to misery. Another thing that I learned from Dr. Michael is that I didn't know, is to, when you wake up in the middle of the night, try not to just go to the bathroom. Often, if you need to, you should go. But he says, unless you really need to go, you want to avoid getting up, because that's going to actually increase your heart rate and upregulate your autonomic nervous system, which is going to make you more activated, right? Instead of downregulated. And we all kind of know this. There's this kind of feeling of being in the sleep mode, and you kind of want to keep that. But here's the really incredible thing. When you get up, so number one, no big deal. I know that everyone at some point experiences sleeplessness. This isn't a big deal. Sometimes I think about my brother and sister-in-law and all their babies, and how, they've had many a night, and still do, where they don't get 8 hours of sleep. So no one's going to die from this. Like, it's all good, right? And no big deal, right? The other thing, we're going to remind ourselves that even if you're not asleep, in quotes, your body can enter into a deeply relaxed state where you get a lot of the benefits of deep sleep or REM sleep or even light sleep. So just remember, just because you have conscious awareness, it doesn't mean you aren't getting the health benefits of sleep. There's a whole field of this that the yogis loved called Yoga Nidra, right? And so you can check out our episode with Tracy Stanley or her book for more on that. And so there's kind of a positive upside to not sleeping. You can do conscious sleep or Yoga Nidra. But here's the wonderful, sweet little practice that I want to recommend for you. A breathwork practice if you can't go to sleep at night, or especially if you wake up in the middle of the night, and it's really simple. Number one rule of breathwork: do not stress yourself out with breathwork. So you want to only use breath work in a deeply relaxed state. So calm the body, find the breath, and breathe in. Gentle pause, breathe out. And you're going to find this rhythm of your own breath for a few breaths to just relax your body initially and make sure that you aren't forcing your breath. You're just sort of exploring the breath at this moment. And then once you become established in that, you're going to breathe in for a count of 4. Pause your breath for at least a count of 4. If you can do it a little longer, that's fine. And then you're going to breathe out for a count of 8. In the yoga tradition, we would call this 1-2 ratio, right? With a pause in the middle. You're going to extend the exhalation out so that it's more or less double the amount of your inhale. And this is going to help relax the system. And most importantly, it's going to help relax an active brain. This is such a wonderful breath practice for channeling the focus of the mind. Another ratio that I work with, and you can play around with this, is I'm going to breathe in for 6. Breathe out for 8. Okay, breathe in for 6. Breathe out for 8. And there's no pausing there. It's just that the exhalation is a little bit longer than the inhalation. These are the things that I use for sleep, but they're also this practice of the breath is also what I use during the day. If I notice that I'm in a mental spin, this is the basic premise of so much of the yoga and meditation that many of us have found helpful. And what the teachings say that this breathwork, pranayama as it's known, is wonderful for is something called dharana. The word dharana is often translated as concentration. But if we go to some of these roots of the Sanskrit, what we can understand from that word is it's about the ability to hold yourself steady. Dharana is like you've got the reins on a wild horse, right? And you're able to kind of rein it in. Dharana leads to dhyana, which is the ability to remain in the state of concentration. And so the big lesson here is, and I'm smiling as I'm talking about this because it's so challenging sometimes, but the big lesson is you have choice. You have agency. You are not a victim of your own mind. And so this breath is nothing but a tool to help guide the wild horse of the mind, which we love. Wild horses are hot, right? They're big, they're powerful, they're beautiful, and they can do a lot of amazing things. And we don't want to demonize ever our mind or our feelings, but we have to have a holding around them, a container. There has to be a bigger part of us online that can rein in the tendency of the mind, because the tendency for most of our mind is to wander off into the past and to wander into the future and get caught in hopes and dreams and wishes and also fears and worries and doubts. And so there's nothing wrong with those things. It's just we're not present. So this breath work really helps us get back in the moment. One of my best friends, you guys know her if you've listened to my podcast, Meredith Hogan, we were talking the other day and she said, when the mind goes off on a tangent, a great technique is to literally imagine yourself in a good way being electrocuted back into the present moment. Imagine you're being electrocuted and you're coming back. And that's such a shamanic technique. It makes me think of Carlos Castaneda and how he would tell the stories of his teacher slapping him on the back, right? There's a way that we have to kind of jolt ourselves and remind ourselves that a lot of the time we're living in a dream. We're living in an illusion, and we're oftentimes living in a delusion. The internet is a delusion. It is. It's just none of it's actually occurring, right? It's all an expression of the past, and in best case scenario, the past, but in worst case scenario, just not real at all. And so this electrocuting ourselves sort of back in the moment can also be helpful, this practice throughout the day, so that at night you're not having to do a lot of this processing. All right, beautiful people, I hope and pray that you guys are all finding moments throughout the day where you can rest in who you really are. I know that's the goal of my days these days, and we live in a time where that's ever more challenging, so the practice has become ever more important. I hope that you sleep like an angel tonight, and we are always sending you guys much love. A big special thanks to Kevin Carlisle of Goodbye Gemini, who wrote this beautiful podcast music, and to DJ Juan Pablo Jimenez in southern Spain for mixing it and making it magic.